Hello there, welcome to Team Fortress TV. This is episode 45, I think it is,
No,
of Fully
58.
Charged. 58. It's the 58th episode of iSeries, and we're talking about it on the 45th episode of Fully Charged, Getawhale. Get your numbers right. But I'm here with Kaidus, CommanderX, Getawhale, and we're going to be discussing the upcoming iSeries, the upcoming World Championships for TF2, which I've got some intercontinental competition, as has been the way for the past few years, and this time we've got both North America and Australia represented, which is better than it was last time as well. Last time we only had two North American teams. I say only, it was still the same amount of intercontinental teams, but it's always nice to have three different regions represented. Kaidus, just give me your brief overview of how you think this is going to compare to the previous iSeries.
I think it's going to be one of the closest, but not one of like the highest skilled, if you know what I mean. I think it's going to be really good still, but I don't think this crop of teams is as strong as we've seen in some events in the past. But often that meant that a lot of it wasn't that close, so I think it's probably better this way, to be honest. It should be pretty good.
Are you trying to tell me that the I58 finals weren't close? Epsilon had a chance.
I enjoyed them, but I don't think I was in the majority.
Did you happen to go and grab a pizza at the same time as they were going on or something? Is that why you enjoyed them?
If I did, I wouldn't have watched any TF2 that day.
War, you appear to be heading towards the light. Are you still with us?
Yeah, it's very bright in my room. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Chris Icarus Parker, what are your thoughts about the iSeries? Like Kaidus, you're a player that's played at them but no longer there. Do you share his nostalgic view that everything's going downhill in terms of skill, but it'll still be hyper competitive?
I don't really know. I think every time there's a LAN event, we'll have everybody set expectations, and then it'll be quite a little bit different. There'll be probably like maybe one or two teams that will sort of perform as you would expect, but I don't know. I think every single time it's just a bit up and down. So regardless, I think the only team that sort of will be maybe the most sort of like consistent and one that we might sort of know about is probably Froyo, but even then there's still a bit of an outlier because I don't think most of their players haven't played at like a huge LAN event ever. So yeah, I just think it's going to be close, but I just don't know who's going to win.
How do you think Flushy are actually going to stack up then? Let's have a talk about this this North American team that is going to be flying across the Atlantic and taking on all comers. They have won, or rather the organization, kind of the team spirit, basically Banny has won the last two iSeries, but this is a completely different team. CX, where do you put their chances? Have you watched the recent ESEA I was going to say LAN finals. I'm living in the past, man. The ESEA final where they're up against Ronin. Do you think that can be used to extrapolate kind of where they're at in terms of the global competition?
I watched the first half where they lost. So based on that...
so you have a bit of a skewed perspective, perhaps.
I think they'll start slow because I got a lot of LAN inexperience. Like the group stage will probably be pretty rough for them. But then I think they'll cool down and probably end up in the final. It'll just the hard route rather than the easy one.
Getawhale, you've had some experience and time with Flushy. How do you think they compare to the previous crop of North American teams, and what are their chances like here?
Sorry, I was just trying to figure out how to turn off text-to-speech and mumble. I'm living a nightmare here. What was the question?
I can text-to-speech you the question if you want.
Okay,
I'll text-to-speech you the question.
What was the question again? How are they going to do?
Don't worry, I'm typing it. I'm typing it.
Okay, type it out. No, I just turned it off, so listen.
Froyo Tech at i58. How do you think they're going to compare to the previous iterations of Froyo and Mixup and Ronin, the other teams, or Ascent as they were at the time? How do you think they're going to compare to that crop of teams and to the European competition?
I mean, like you said, the people playing around Banny are like totally... I wanted to say they were new. They're not new, but it's the first time for like half of the team being at an international LAN. So, I mean, that's got to play a part. I mean, they've been to like smaller LANs like GXL and stuff, but it's not the same as Insomnia. So you got to assume that there'll be a little bit of I don't know, nerves or jet lag or like some kind of negative effect from that, don't you think? On top of the fact that they didn't exactly roll finals the other night. I mean, they took it as long as it could have possibly gone. I mean, I don't know if this looks like the dominant Froyo. I'll be very interested to see actually how half of the team performs, honestly.
Yeah, you were talking about they didn't exactly roll the competition. Kaidus, we were talking about it a little bit before we went live about the kind of strange interplay in the North American scene at the moment, because Ronin their players have left for greener pastures perhaps, and the team in general isn't scrimming and had a bit of a weird performance in the upper bracket final. Do you think that both teams were performing at full cylinders in that grand final for ESEA?
I don't really know, to be honest. I haven't followed much up until playoffs. Like, I mean, I watched the upper bracket final, all the Ronin Froyo games I watched basically, and Ronin were pretty clearly messing around a bit in the upper final, definitely not trying their best. But then, from what I could tell, they were playing as well as they could without having really practiced for the grand final. And I mean, they won they won the first best of three like 2-0. They won the first map of the second best of three, so they were like 3 maps like undefeated in that grand final. But ultimately, they had to win like 4 maps to win it. So I don't know. I feel like based on what I saw, if they actually tried in the upper bracket final, they could well have won that game, and then only needed 2 maps in the grand final. So I didn't find it at all convincing. I'm a bit perplexed that there seems to be a general consensus at the moment that Froyo are coming into this the favourites. I think people are just kind of seeing the Froyo name and remembering what that kind of meant before with Clockwork and Duatno and these people. I mean, I'm not saying they're not the favourites, but it seems weird to me that people have them as this like kind of leader of the pack and everyone else straggling. I don't really see what separates them from the rest at the moment.
Yeah, you got to consider too, the team they were playing, it was Ronin, but if you know anything about Ronin, like their main players had like 0 hours in the game, and so they're playing a Ronin team that wasn't even half the team didn't even scrim, or like they didn't even scrim. They weren't even scrimming. They were literally just playing like Rando and Malin, those guys, and they're super talented. Don't get me wrong; they're still playing FPSs, but it's not like they were playing the most crazy, like hard to beat Ronin team of all time, and they still had trouble with it. It's one thing worth noting.
Yeah, in terms of the preparation that they're going to be putting into it, I feel like the Froyo Tech teams and Banny behind them always seem to really try and prepare more for the I series, or they have done in the past at least. I don't know whether any of you guys have some insight into kind of how much preparation Froyo Tech are actually going into, or whether they felt like they had to prepare for the ESC finals and for I series at the same kind of level as in previous years, or are we just going to see kind of an all-out brawl with loads of different teams coming in that really haven't matched up before, apart from Full Tilt and Grounds?
I mean, if you think about it, I don't know how much time they're going to really have to prepare, honestly, because, I mean, me personally, I'm getting on a plane in like 4 days, and I don't know when they're all going, but like Jasmine T are already there, are they not? Like boot camping or doing whatever they're doing. So,
in fact, they're scrimming at the moment. That's why they're
right
not
now,
here. Yeah,
So-
they're literally scrimming now. I think they've scrimmed for like 6 maps today or something like that. Did you guys play
crazy.
them as well, Kaidus?
Yeah, we played them. Like, they were kind of still sorting all their LAN cafe shit out when we played them, so we only got like, I guess we got 2 maps in just about, and I think they played like Full Tilt a couple of maps, and like I don't know how they're still playing. It was like they played us at 19, Full Tilt 20, and then Zenix at 21. I guess they must be playing more than 2 maps with Zenix, because they've been playing that game since like 21:30, man. It's like like 24 now by European time. So they're going hard, but as far as I know, they got rolled in every game tonight, which is not great, but also completely expected, and what every Australian team has done when they've boot camped in history, because they always have garbage setups. So we can't really take that much away from it. Just hope that they can appreciate that fact as well and aren't getting too frustrated, which I guess they're probably not if they're still playing.
Yeah, they must be committed rather than getting on tilt about it, and that's obviously the best attitude to have. Ale, I forgot that you were with us because you don't have a webcam. If I'm perfectly honest, you're just a forgettable character. You fade into the background.
Suck Fide Show.
But suck me. Okay.
Suck Fide Show is what I said.
But Ale, how did you find the games then against the Australians? Let's not talk so much about the Americans and speculate about it, but for the team that we have a little bit more data on from literally just from scrims today, as Kaidus says, on potentially garbage setups and in a situation where Australian teams have always been super shaky before the event and then turned up better. But what were your general opinions like of your scrims today against Jasmine? Do you think that they are going to be able to perform at LAN?
Yeah, I really think so. Like in the scrims, they weren't showing that they weren't that strong, but like individually, you can tell that they know what they're doing, and even as a team, like they have some small errors, but I think they'll definitely like improve for the actual LAN, and you know, I think they'll be around the same level as like X Crowns or Xenix, I think. So like they're not gonna. I don't think that they're like a top 2 team, but I think that they're a bit unreliable to play against, you know, because you don't know what they're gonna do. So they can cause an upset for sure, and like they can, you know, potentially get top 4, top 3.
We are joined as well by Flushy from Xenix, as you said, the X Crowns team. Hello, Flushy. Are you with us?
Hey, how's it going, man? Yeah, I'm good.
Hey. So we've just been talking about the teams that are arriving there. What's your overall spread of the landscape? You're not looking at it from a real historical point of view, I'd imagine, because you haven't been to an iSeries like when they've been intercontinental and played there for, I don't know. Were you even playing at an iSeries back in the day? I honestly can't remember. It was so long
With
ago.
Infuse, wasn't it?
Yeah, I got the iSeries that I attended. I got onto the stage with it was like the breakout year for MGE Mike. Numlocked was in the team as well. Boomy, us cats with Greg and Kun, and we lost to Epsilon in the final. So
Was it I-43?
Became second in I-43. Yep.
Ah, yeah, right, okay.
But that was like 5 years ago, man. So it's a long time.
Yeah, long time ago. How are you viewing the competition at the moment? You've recently slotted into Xenix. I believe you're main calling for them at the moment as well.
Yeah, so I was picked up by Ams and Smear. I think they wanted like a main caller in the team, so they picked me up. And then I sort of brought along Funds as well, because I played with Funds in Planet Express for this season. So yeah, playing with that sort of lineup for the last couple of weeks. Funds was on holiday for like the last 2 weeks, so we've had to sort of use subs and stuff. But today was our first full day of scrims against the likes of Spanked and the Aussies. So yeah, it was pretty good day for us.
First full day of scrims. Some might say too little, too late, given that we're about 5 days away from the LAN. But where do you see yourselves, and where would you like to see yourselves by the time LAN rolls around?
Yeah, I mean, we set ourselves a target of top 4. I don't think that's too much of a secret, and I don't think that's an unrealistic target as well. Certainly, like I think it'd be silly for us to say to see us ahead of like Crowns and Fulton at the moment in Europe, because I don't think we've been able to record a single online victory against them in the PCW. So I think it'd be silly to say we're like above them. But against the lesser teams like Spanked and France and Denmark, like those sorts of teams, we've had absolutely no problems, and I don't really see the Aussies as a problem at all.
Interesting.
So I guess Freya are a bit of an unknown quantity, but I don't see the Aussies as too much of a problem.
See, that's what I was going to ask you, because if you're placing your team top 4 and you don't think that you realistically are going to be able to beat Full Tilt or Crowns, then that places you above either Froyatech or Jasmine T. So what I was going to ask you is, which one of those are you thinking that you'll be able to overtake and leapfrog? But for your money, it's Jasmine T that are going to be ending up the weakest of the powerhouse intercontinental teams.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Jasmine T at all, but I don't really see them as too much of a problem for us. Certainly the way that Crowns and Fulto are playing at the moment, even with little practice Fulto's been getting, I think those two will probably be in the final or something. Freya they'll be solid, but I don't know, like I think it's the weakest American team that's been going to LAN for a while. So they're a bit of an unknown quantity, but I think they'll be very solid. They'll be in the mix somewhere. Yeah.
You got your mic blowing. You got your fan blowing right into your microphone, by the way.
Oh, my bad, bro. I'm gonna turn it off.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's just a little man sat behind him, blowing into the microphone to give an atmospheric effect. He's blowing Flushy's hair back. He's just stood there like, yes, we're going to overtake Froyo, and his hair's blowing back in the breeze. What do you agree with? Do you agree with that assessment of Froyo Tate that it's the weakest North American side that we're going to see in an I-Series or have seen in an I-Series for, well, ever?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that they will be the weakest NA team that we've seen. But I think this was also probably like the weakest set of European teams we've seen as well. So I think it's like, yeah, I don't think it really matters because both teams are sort of like in a bit of a bad spot at the moment. So it just depends to see, how these teams have sort of adapted to I guess the lack of talent, to put it bluntly, or simply. I don't want to go on a tirade for 10 minutes. So, yeah.
WARHURYEAH rant part 2.
You would never do that.
No. I don't know. I've actually used up all my passion this year, so I can't actually.
I don't believe you ever had any passion. You always talk like that.
Well, I busted it out the other day, so that was it. That's my passion reserves emptied.
You
for
peaked
5
too
years.
early.
Yeah,
you peaked too early. You're on the
I was
analyst
going to
desk
save
in
that
less than a
for-
week.
I was
We'll get
saving
you some
that.
injections for land.
Well, I was saving all that for my wedding, so now my wedding's going to be fucking miserable now because I've used up all my emotions to rage at TF2. So
I do.
You got an
Yeah.
analyst desk to sit on, buddy. You better get it back, my man.
I do apologise, but this is what I'm going to be like on that analyst desk.
What are some storylines that people should look out for then in this I-Series? We're talking about it being highly competitive, but which of the teams do you think are going to have the most interesting matchups and the most competitive matchups? At DreamHack Summer, we saw the two teams clash in a ridiculous fashion. Not even going to mention the end of it, but it was so close. It could not have been closer. How do you think the teams and the storylines of the bracket is going to unfold?
It's going to be, as I said earlier, like LAN is very, very sort of strange. I think it's kind of the time when like players individually will either sort of show up or they'll completely beef really, really hard. Like for an example, TLR last year in the group stage. I can't wait. Shut the fuck up. What is wrong with you? Ah! Sorry.
There's that passion.
No, it's it is. I'm gonna fucking punch my cat in the face.
Can we get a fundraiser to bring War's cat to that?
Oh, no, I don't want that, trust me. Anyway, yeah, so obviously TLR last year put up like a big sort of setup at the group stages. Looked kind of dominant. It was Reason that was sort of like the team that everybody was expecting to plow through most teams, and they started playing a bit shaky. Like Forsaken for one, arguably he didn't really show up to LAN, and he was sort of like quite a good factor online. So it's kind of like these individual players that I think we're not going to know until it happens. Like I really can't sort of decide how the LAN's going to sort of go until like the group stages are over. That's when you start seeing if a player's is struggling to deal with LAN, or they're just sort of not showing up, kind of thing.
How do you think the Australian storyline is going to play out when they have a bit more time to sink their teeth into how the Europeans are playing and really get themselves settled on LAN, Kaidus?
I don't really know, to be honest. Like, I kind of agree with what Flushy was saying before with the Australians. Like, I don't think they're going to be horrendous, but I don't really see them being able to contend with like the top teams. I see them probably having good games with like Spanked and Zags, to be honest. Was it Flushy was saying that? Maybe I'm misquoting.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, like in groups, like maybe they could do some upsets because it's random maps, and I don't know. I don't really think groups mean a whole lot, to be honest, because it's like random maps and all sorts of weird stuff happening. So I think in groups maybe they could do some upsets, but I think when it gets to like best of threes, map elimination, things like that, I can't really see them like doing a whole lot to like us, Froyo, Full Tilt.
The problem with that Australian roster is they put so much pressure on Paulson and Yui to do a lot of the work. Like I think those two are by far the standout players for that team. Like I'm not shit talking the rest of the roster, but I think like Dave as a medic is an unknown quantity. A lot of the people before like Madness haven't really seen what he's been able to do. I think they place a lot of pressure on Yui and Paulson, and if they sort of don't really get the job done, then they don't really have anything to fall back on. At least that's what it's looked at in scrims. But you have to bear in mind that they're playing on really, really shitty monitors, and I know it doesn't seem like much, but I expect their scats to be a lot better on LAN than they are in this shitty internet cafe with 60 Hz monitors.
Yeah, I agree that the team appears to be constructed around kind of Paulson and Yui with Madness to a lesser extent, but is that actually a bad thing if you've got a style that your team is executing? Is there any reason to say that those players are then not going to be able to perform at LAN, or other people, couldn't step up to their shoes? There are other teams where they're kind of centralized around a particular style, or do you feel like the other players on the team are just not of that star caliber to be able to pick up the slack?
Put it this way: if you had Yuki on Pocket instead of apologies, I don't know the name of that Pocket at the moment, and Sheep instead of Madness, I think that is a much scarier team than the one they're bringing to LAN at the moment.
Yeah, but those are like the best two players ever to play in Australia.
Yeah.
Most teams would be better with Sheep and Yuki.
Yeah, if you released like me with Mike.
Yeah, so my point is there's significant downgrades in the team, or I'm not going to use the word downgrade. I'm going to use the word like unproven players or players that we haven't really heard of. And so far, from what I've seen, and from like looking at their casts and stuff, I don't really think those players will pose any sort of problems that Euro teams haven't seen before.
I think it's worth factoring in as well, like for all the hype that kind of surrounded Immunity in the past, they did only ever actually like come forth. That's obviously like quite an achievement coming from like what is basically like to the outside looks like a nothing scene, but basically the best assembly of Australian players you could kind of ever come up with only really came forth. I'm not sure like who on this Jasmine T lineup would replace anyone on the i58 Immunity, but I haven't seen enough of them yet to really judge. Like maybe Yui, but like I don't see Paulson really being better than Termo. Maybe as good, I'm not really sure yet. But like, kind of again agreeing with Flushy a little bit. Like I don't really see. Like that's the team that came forth, basically.
Perhaps as well.
Maybe, but I mean, it's like the difference is if there's any better players on that team, it seems negligible at this point. I'm not saying that they can't do well because some of the teams, like definitely some of the teams from EU America, are not as strong as well. But I'm not sure. I think it's gonna be tough for them.
I expect them to significantly improve over the coming week. Like they'll be scrimming against the top 3 teams in Europe and Spanked, and it's a quick learning curve. I expect them to really improve a lot, and obviously when they get proper monitors and they play with 5 ping on LAN, I think they'll be a lot better than they're showing at the moment.
Oh, yeah,
it's early doors, but they did just get slammed like 6 times in a row today.
Yeah, like I'm trying to make my judgments. Like I haven't really watched them play extensively, but like I watched the Australian, like the OzFortress Grand Finals, like the most recent one. I think it was the most recent one anyway, where they played like kind of the Yuki Termo team. I'm trying to base more of my opinions off what I saw there than what I saw like tonight, because tonight was just shit PCs, well, mediocre PCs. They said terrible internet, bad monitors, and probably some jet lag. And it's the first time playing on a new setup compared to people at home, and which is always like even if they had good setup, like it's a new setup, which makes a difference. I'm trying to base more of what I'm saying on like what I've seen of them online. I don't know, it is too early to tell, and they probably will improve a lot just from boot camping and then having good ping. Obviously, like War said as well, you get different things from players on LAN to where you get online. Some go up, some go down. So, but like I'm just trying to like compare more to teams of the past. I don't think they're as good, but I'm not saying like I could be totally wrong. I'm open to that.
I mean, even though they lost all these games, I'm looking at some of the logs, and I mean, seems like they're doing all right. Like I see Paulson putting up big numbers and Geo, and it seems like they're possibly ready. I didn't see the matches obviously, and like you said, they got slammed, but it doesn't seem like they're laying down by any means.
I mean, the other thing as well to consider is that in TF2 you can kind of get slammed on the scoreline while still being fairly competitive and just slipping up like multiple times on the same thing. And once you patch those issues, you can see big improvements in terms of the scoreline, right? So I didn't watch the scrims because I was busy and I've only just looked over the logs. So by no means is this like good analysis, but there's certainly the potential for them to have just messed up a few crucial areas rather than being completely outplayed. What were your opinions of that, alle, when you were playing them? What was the difference in what you were able to execute? Was it just like individual slip-ups? You said that each player looked like they knew what they were doing, but overall, I mean, you guys thrashed them on Gully Wash at one point, didn't you, in like 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
What was going wrong for them to allow you to do that? And is it something they can fix?
Like, for us, it just came down to just out DMing them and outplaying them like all the time. I mean, they could work on their team play a bit more, I guess, if they wanna. But yeah, if they wanna have a greater chance. Like I said, like I think individually they all have a lot of talent, but I guess they just have to apply it a bit better. Yeah.
Is that the kind of thing then that's going to improve when they get onto better PCs? Because obviously the
Definitely.
individual deathmatch and stuff is going to improve dramatically once you get onto better setups,
Yeah.
as you can attest to, having played on a toaster for all of your life.
Yeah, like definitely. That's why I don't want to judge them too early, because I think that they will for sure like peak in skill wise at the LAN, obviously. So I don't want to judge them if they get rolled until then.
I think they'll compete, like with Full Tilt, with Froyo, to Crowns to a lesser extent, with Xenix. Like I think they'll compete. I still don't really peg them to go to really finish ahead of many of those teams, except for maybe Xenix. But I think the games will be good. The games will be close. I don't think they're going to get rolled over.
I think stylistically there's a problem for them at the moment. It's interesting you say that you just completely out-DM them, Ali. I think that might very well be the case, that you just completely shatter them. But I think stylistically there's quite an interesting matchup with them playing so aggressive compared to, say, Crowns. Like I see absolutely no way, even with all of their players firing, that they're going to beat a Crowns at the moment, because they'll just get picked apart. Like playing that aggressive. For example, like holding top lobby on Badlands with uber disadvantage. This is something they try to do to us repeatedly. Like if you try that against Crowns, I think you're just going to get absolutely destroyed. So I think at the moment they have absolutely no chance of beating a Crowns or a Full Tilt. I think they need to have quite a drastic change of style. But that's also very interesting. Like I've sort of I'm not really sure exactly what style they'll bring, but and also I don't know what style the Yanks will bring. So I think it'd be quite interesting to see sort of the different styles of the continents going up against each other. But at the moment, like I don't think they have a chance against the Crowns or a Full Tilt.
Well, let's have a talk about Crowns and Full Tilt as well, because we kind of considered the global competition and left these two guys as known quantities, but they aren't really. There haven't been very many tournaments for a while. What was the last thing that happened? Was it the ETF2L Grand Final all that time ago? And then the last LAN that we've had was DreamHack Summer 2. Was that? Yeah, basically 2 months ago. And those are the last times we've seen the teams compete, and they didn't even go up against each other in the ETF2L Grand Finals. So where do you guys place those, both in the overall competition and when they go up head-to-head war? Full Tilt obviously didn't make the finals. Is that indicative of anything, or was it just a one-time slip-up?
Didn't they like not have Mike for like a couple of the games?
Yeah,
or was it? And Ali was missing as well. So like the games I watched Mike play, he really did sort of, he was a very important factor, and he is a very important factor for Full Tilt. So I wouldn't really say that is like their season is necessarily how they're going to sort of do it LAN. I don't know, it's going to be very, very difficult between these two teams again, because I mean obviously they have been to LAN, but I think like the occasion can get to some players. But again, we'll have to. It's really so hard to sort of like call how these teams are going to do at LAN when they actually pay off against each other. It's going to be very, very difficult. I really can't see it like being anything but incredibly close. I know that's a bit of like a shit answer, but it's just, I find it very difficult to see how it's going to go.
It's alright, well, we appreciate the truth rather than dishonesty here. What about you, CX? What have you seen from these teams that would lead you to have an opinion on how they're going to play at the I-Series? Crowns at the moment, even though people have been kind of bigging up WARHURYEAH Tech, Crowns are my personal pick to be the favourites going into the tournament.
I think the biggest thing with Crowns and Full Tilt is they both, to varying degrees, been there and done it before on a LAN, whereas with the Australians, we don't know. They've not played at a LAN. we've not even seen them against other teams really of that caliber, except for maybe Termo and Yuki's team. Again, with the Americans, like what, 404's first LAN, Paddy's first LAN, Free State's first LAN, Muma's first LAN. Like, I know, again, like you don't know what's going to happen with that, but with Crowns and Full Tilt, I think they kind of set the bar. Even though like Crowns are more experienced on LAN, I think we're more likely to see exactly what we see online from Crowns and Full Tilt. Whereas WARHURYEAH and Jasmine T could go up or down either way.
For the interplay between the two teams, what, in terms of how the group plays out and how the brackets play out, do you think they should be viewing each other as direct competition, or are they more likely to get upset by one of the teams they haven't played against as directly, haven't put in as much preparation for?
You mean Crowns and Full Tilt?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think either team will take too much from a group stage, because ultimately it doesn't really mean anything. You don't get too much of a distinct advantage from finishing top of a group to say like third or fourth in the group. I don't think either team's going to take too much. I think both teams will play it pretty cagely. Like they won't want to give away what they want to do in the knockout phase. But I think that game, again, it could go either way because it'll be close, but I don't think it'll matter too much to either team. It'll more be the wild cards of like the different styles from America and Australia. That'll be more likely to upset either team. Because they play each other all the time, Crowns and Full Tilt. Like they know exactly what they're getting from each other.
In terms of playing each other all the time and knowing exactly what they get, I assume from the case studies that I've pulled out of logs and various like interactions with the players that Crowns get the better end of that most of the time, Kaidus.
Yeah, most of the time. I don't know. I always try to like not really think too much into scrims, because most of the time, like I'm obviously calling for Crowns now, and when I'm calling in scrims, it's like I'm never playing to really. I don't know, like 1 in 10 scrims, I would like kind of in my head it'd be like a simulation, like okay, let's really try and like win this game and see what happens. But most of the time, it's kind of like I don't want to. Like if they're doing something in a particular situation, I'll see like how can I beat that, and then I won't call it because I don't want them to learn how to adapt to the adaptation, if you know what I mean. And I'm sure they're doing a lot of the same stuff. So in scrims, it's always a bit weird, but obviously the matches we get the better end of, but they've had Mike missing. Honestly, the thing that gives me like the most confidence when I think about that matchup is how it went down at DreamHack in the end, when we had what was honestly a vastly inferior roster. Whereas they had pretty much the same roster, which was still for Tech, and I think honestly Tech is probably the better player in that. Obviously, still was an unknown quantity on LAN, so like seeing how that went down in the end with Captain on Scout and Stark on Pocket, and how my boys were able to like adapt to that, and obviously tie in the final, but on all of their maps they managed to get a 2-2 tie in the end. So that's kind of what gives me confidence, I think, is knowing how that situation went down, as well as like all the other stuff. I don't really think too much into the scrims though.
For there's two big things that I want to touch on as well that are kind of wider discussions that I want people to pitch in on, that they're tangentially related to iSeries, but I think they'll generate some good discussion as well. Is that we recently saw, and Kaidus will be kicking me for bringing this up, but we recently saw the CSGO announcement, right, about coaching, where Valve came in and they basically just shut down this idea that the coaches should be this sixth man on the roster calling. And there was this huge kind of lashback from the pros who felt that this was a horrible way to do it. Everybody loses in that situation. You get to see worse CS played. You get to you kind of screw over these guys who've built their teams up around having this calling coach like Stax, etc. And you don't really benefit the lower teams anyway, because the top teams in terms of money can just buy out the better players in that situation. It's not a relevant discussion. But nevertheless, Valve have kind of clamped down, or are intending to clamp down, on the use of coaches in that capacity. What are your thoughts about how, other than Kaidus obviously, what are your thoughts about how coaching should be used? Just at the beginning. You can reply afterwards.
He's gonna silence me, man.
Yeah, we'll just silence Kaidus. He's not gonna respond.
I think basically the Valve's announcement relating to that was like kind of poorly done, because it was leaked by an email. Like most of the pro players got to sort of have a bit of a whinge and stuff, and then Valve actually brought out the statement regarding it, and it was just pretty much what they didn't want was it to just be, five fraggers and then a coach that is in-game leading and making in-game calls and stuff like that. That's not what they wanted. They wanted a coach to actually have and be a coach role, not be an in-game leader, and that's what this rule is sort of meant to try and sort of reduce. They don't want these coaches to be able to sort of change the calls mid-round based on what they see from each person's monitors. For TF2, because this has only just started, it's kind of difficult for us to control, but I kind of agree with how Valve had sort of put it forward, how I feel that it should just be a coach should just be a coach. They shouldn't be the in-game leader and call from the sidelines. You don't see it. I know this is the shit comparison that nobody wants to hear, but when you compare it to other sports, you don't really sort of hear in-game sort of like coaching or calling, telling people how to do the plays all the time. Coaches are just there to sort of change the situation, give suggestions, and tell players how to sort of like change their positioning and all that lot. But yeah, that's my sort of take on it.
Just to jump on for a moment the sports example, because I just thought of something that I haven't had triggered before. But I don't know much about North American sports, but does the NFL use
headsets,
microphones and headsets, right? Do they have the coaches? Are they allowed to talk during the games and stuff? Yeah, Getawhale.
Let's refer this to our local expert.
That's what I'm here for, football man. I mean, normally, pretty much all NFL teams, the plays are called by up in the stands by the coordinators who call it down to the coach, and then the coaches. There's one or two coaches in the NFL who are down on the field that call the stuff, but it's coming from upstairs, so to speak.
But is it during the play?
Fed to them during the game?
Yeah. Is it during the play, or is it just every time a play's set kind of thing?
Yeah. It's all the way through. It's for every play, so it's way more involved than you would ever really see, I would imagine, in any esport. I mean, in CS, they're not telling them. I mean, it's different. NFL is so much different from esports because it's one play and then it's one play and then it's one play.
Yeah.
But I
think
it's different.
I think just to use that as kind of an example, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong in having an extra role on your team that can be filled by somebody who's talented in that way. I don't think it detracts from the other side of the team. I can see where people are coming from, where they say that the 6 players in TF2 or the 5 players in Counter-Strike should be able to control themselves, should contain an in-game leader who's able to do that kind of stuff. That's part of what makes you a good CS team. But it's really arbitrary to say that is what should happen. I don't see a reason why, especially in the CS scene where they've had coaches for so long, why they should go back on it at this point.
They've not really had coaches for so long, though, in CS, and in-game leading coaching hasn't really been around for so long.
Right, but they've still had it long enough for people to build their careers around it and stop playing in other teams in order to get put into that role.
I don't know.
Like Starix and Navi.
To me, yeah, but that is just still just kind of like he wasn't really doing well, so they took him away and they thought, hey, this guy could actually coach instead. It wasn't sort of like I am quitting so I can specifically coach. That's not how I feel it's sort of done. I mean, even though people build careers around it, the other problem is that obviously Valve have communicated, and they did multiple times, saying that they don't want coaches to be taking the roles. So even like just after Starix became the in-game leader, Valve had sort of said, we don't really see this as the way forward for coaches' involvement. We don't want them to be in-game leaders. So it's not like there was no warning, and it's not like Valve haven't had a stance. It's just that everybody just decides to act shocked once they've made this decision, kind of thing.
I mean, one good thing is Valve doesn't even know i58's happening, so we don't even have to worry about it.
That is a good point.
At all.
Hallelujah.
I can't wait for Gabe Newell to fly
when
and
it's
kick
gonna.
Kaidus out.
We've ruined this now. This is when they're actually going to find out. There's going to be a blog post on Friday morning saying that they do not condone the use of coaches, and they'll
We get
specifically
a
call out
250k prize
Kaidus.
pool, but Kaidus gets dropped, unfortunately. What do you think? What are your opinions on it? Obviously, I can assume that you're in favour of coaching from the standpoint of No, not a coach's perspective, but a standpoint of it benefiting the game or benefiting the level of play rather than what should be used, Kaidus.
I don't really know, to be honest. Like, I don't think the sports comparison is not a great one. I don't even think the CS comparison is a particularly good one. Obviously, we have no others to make, but I mean, like, I'll just address it like bit by bit. Like, first of all, like the sports comparison is weird because no one in the team is calling in sports. Like, a guy will like in say football, like soccer, you have like defenders coordinating with each other and people yelling at each other. There's some calls, but there's no like you have a captain, but he's like a man motivator. He's not really telling people what to do in like micromanaging like kind of way we have in esports. So that's kind of a bit weird. So, but like for CS, I think you can have it one way or the other. Like both work. What I find really super weird about that whole thing is how far Valve let it go, and then how suddenly they like cut it out. And obviously, you can say that they told the players their stance, but what were the players going to do? Were they going to turn down the chance to win millions of dollars over the last year because at some point Valve might disallow it? It's kind of weird, and I think the way Valve went about that was really terrible. But I have to bring this all back to TF2. I don't like the CS comparison because having done this whole like coaching thing for a while now, I don't know CS in that much detail. I think it's a bit weird how Valve say how the impression is being given that CS now is like a coach and then 5 like aim machines. Like a coach can't control 5 stupid people who can just aim. They need their own game sense and their own understanding. So it's a bit weird. I think Valve don't really fully understand that based on the way their statement was worded. But in TF2, I think it's actually vastly inferior having a coach main calling than having a player in the game main calling. And the fact that I'm doing it now just speaks to the lack of leaders in the scene at the moment. But also the fact that we kind of wanted to continue with Crowns what we started over the last 9 months. Because obviously I kind of built the team, I set it up to play how I wanted, and we felt the best way we were going to get the best performance was not to start from a clean slate, but to try and continue that in a botched kind of fashion. Because calling in TF2 is very strange. Like, it's not like CS. CS, the caller is often the worst player on the team. He's the player taking like the least important roles and kind of standing at the back watching how things go down. Whereas in TF2, the caller is at the center of the team. Like, you watch Froyo, you see Manny being one of the only scouts in the game to routinely top damage and all this kind of stuff, taking like the center of the game in a way. I did the same when I was main calling as a demo man in Crowns. Even though I wasn't necessarily the most skilled player on the team, I would take a lot of the heals and I would top damage regularly and be like at the center of the play all the time. It's just a lot easier to call from that situation because you kind of have the heals to make the calls and all that. And also like when I'm calling now, it's like I can say what I want to do and what I want say Spud to do and what I want the team to do. But actually, if I was in the game, I'd already be doing it and I would just tell my team what I'm doing. And I wouldn't be this like 3 to 4 second buffer period with every call I make. And we could just do it instantly. And there's no way around that. Like, no amount of practice is going to fix that situation. So I think it's actually vastly inferior in TF2, but it's just the best decision for us as it happens. It's why I was kind of surprised when some people complain so much about it. Because I think if you have a player that can main call, like, in your 6-man lineup, it's way better to do that. Like, a coach would still be beneficial to teams, like, in the way that Valve wants CS coaches to be now. But I think it's actually much worse calling from coach than calling from in-game. It's nowhere near like in CS, where teams actually prefer it with all the options available to them. Wow, that was a rant.
Your little tangent there on teams making use of a coach in the way that, you know, sports coaches or Valve have an idea of a coach is interesting as well, because the preparation that teams put in for I-Series can often be one of the deciding factors, I think. If you're preparing against these teams and watching them and making sure that you understand how they all play, you have much less of a chance of being upset and much more of a chance of upsetting those above you. Like the preparation that TLR, for example, was able to put in off the back of having Alpha join you. I remember Happy rabbiting on for hours at me about how much that helped their team, especially when they were playing against Ascent. And the preparation that Jasmine are putting in at the moment for just in terms of the games that they're playing, in terms of like grinding tonight, lends me to believe that they're probably putting in a lot of work as well. Are your teams, Flushy, are your teams putting in that same kind of effort? Is there the same kind of drive for your teams to be reviewing demos and doing that kind of stuff that you wouldn't normally do for regular ETFL games?
Yeah, a little bit.
Affirmative.
Is that your way of saying we should be, but we're not?
No, we are. We have a lot of stuff scheduled, like what we're gonna do. We already have done a lot of stuff, so we're only gonna get better from here, you know.
Very detailed lots of stuff scheduled.
I can't give you the details. It's very secret.
Okay, trade secrets, right?
They're getting Ips to coach.
Ips is flying in.
I don't know, maybe.
Of course.
No, it's going to in-game lead from a safe. Right?
Yeah, that's the surprise.
Yeah.
It's going to be Nox actually. Nox is using his prize money from Overwatch to get himself over here.
The Numlock was going to be there for i58, but unfortunately the Overwatch Open qualifiers are happening at the same time, so they need to redeem themselves after a terrible showing this weekend. Anyway,
They'll probably be out in time to turn up.
yeah, probably. Flushy, what kind of preparation have your teams been putting into it?
I mean, I've made it very clear that we set ourselves a goal to finish top 4, and the sort of preparation we've been doing just stems from that goal. I expect everybody there to be shit hot in terms of DM. When this finishes and I leave Mumble and Funds isn't on a DM server, there'll be repercussions. So I expect individuals from my team to be putting in the necessary work. Myself and Smear, as well as our secret weapons, Dr. Phil and Condom, have been putting in a lot of work in terms of reviewing demos and stuff. All the usual shit, really. I think we got a couple of pocket strats that can surprise a few teams, as I'm sure a lot of other teams do, but nothing really out of the ordinary, to be honest.
Let's use that opportunity to segue into some wider predictions then for the event. Might be a bit difficult given that we've got the unknown quantity of WARHURYEAH and also Jasmine T, who've literally only just who have only just started scrimming tonight at in a LAN bootcamp setting. But I want to hear your guys' predictions if you had to go out on a limb and say how you feel the competition will stack up at the event in terms of 1 through. We'll go 1 through 4. Top 4 CX.
Crowns will win. WARHURYEAH probably second, but it'll be really close with full tilt, and that could go either way depending on how each team is on the day. So yeah, WARHURYEAH second, full tilt second and third, and the Australians fourth.
What?
As I have to do this, WARHURYEAH, Crowns, full tilt, comfortably spanked.
That's a bold prediction. Goodbye, goodbye, Jasmine T.
Always believe in Skeech.
Yeah. This
Why
is
do
his
you
year.
think that?
Why
do you put your faith in Skeech?
I don't put my faith in Skeech. It'll probably be, I don't know, Zenix is a bit weird because they have Tiger, so it depends on how much he goes emotional tilt boy. If he sort of keeps his cool, I think they'll be fine together, but he seems like a pretty toxic gamer. But obviously others will know more than me if he is or not. So yeah, it just depends. The thing is that Zenix have people like Ams who have like a history of just doing the wrong thing. So yeah, I think it's going to be close fourth between them and Jasmine T. Maybe that depends on how they perform, with a good setup.
Getawhale, what are your thoughts for the top 4?
I mean, I think WARHURYEAH will be in the mix there somewhere. Honestly, top 2, I'm also thinking like Crowns full tilt. I mean, I really don't know what to expect out of WARHURYEAH. It's worrisome as the only North American team going there. They didn't look great, but I mean, they've got Banny, they've got TLR somehow, who came back for some reason to come to i58, and I'm guessing he's serious about it. Unless they're practicing in some secret space station that's not connected to Logs TF, I don't know that they've been preparing much, and I don't know when they're flying. So that's something to think about. And I mean, I'm going to be looking at Jasmine T too, honestly. I mean, I wish I could watch some of these scrims that they're playing and some of this boot camping, because as much as we talked about, it's not the big Aussie names that we've always known through the years. It's not the Yukis or Termos. I don't know. I feel good about them. I think Paulson is going to maybe show that he's a really, really good demo, and that maybe I don't know. I think Jasmine T will be in there too. So same kind of answer. Crowns full tilt at the top. Aussies and Americans in there somewhere, but I don't know. I got my concerns about Froyo, speaking as the North American representative.
Ale, where do you see the team stacking up? Let's get a bit of a biased view from a player.
Alright, obviously full tilt number 1. And then probably Crowns second place. I think it will be a all EU final, hopefully. Froyotech third. And I'm gonna say Senix on fourth.
Pretty interesting. So, you know, we're certainly risking underestimating the international competition, I think, here. But it's difficult to kind of put Froyotech up there, I think, though people are talking about them a lot, because they don't seem to be performing at that level. They don't have the star players, and they don't have they haven't had that much preparation. But I'm just kind of running through the people on the roster in my head and thinking about who could just step up ridiculously at LAN. Because last iSeries, there was kind of a prevalent thought that, you know, with the changes that they'd made and put Ash back on Scout and Banny on Pocket, that they would suffer a result. And Banny just destroyed the competition, leading his team, taking the heals and delivering there. So I don't know. There's something that makes me not want to count Froyotech out in a lot of these situations. I think they might make the final. I think we'll probably see Crowns number 1 and Froyo number 2. I would like to put Full Tilt up there as potentially even number 1, but it relies on them being able to not be upset by stuff that they haven't prepared for or haven't seen before. I think the team can occasionally be a bit slow to react and adapt, so they have the potential to be upset, I think, but they also have the potential to make the finals or possibly go all the way. As for Jasmine, I kind of agree with you guys that they're going to be sat around the same 4th place, which is disappointing for the Australian fans, but at the same time, that's as good as Australia's ever gone.
But it's not the depth. Like Australia always have a couple of good players, like a couple of like best in the world kind of players, but they never have the depth to actually back it up in the same way Europe or America do.
But I feel like, don't they have the biggest chip on their shoulders, though? I mean, don't they have kind of the most to prove out of any of the teams, really?
Well, I don't think they do. The thing is, though, is that when they've gone to LAN, it's not like they've performed terribly. Like, they've done really, really, really well, better than some EU teams. Like, what was it, i58, where they finished 4th? Like, yeah. They lost like really close, like in a really close game to Mix Up. So it's not like they've gone and always been sort of like the outsiders. I mean, they've put almost every single team to like a really close game. It just seems that they, you know, at the end of the day, they just sort of lose narrowly. So
was it the group stage as well? They beat Froyotech, I'm pretty sure, as well.
Yeah. At the same time, though, they were playing an incredibly close game against Osomniac and could have been knocked out in 5th, or would that have been 5th or 6th or something?
Like, speaking as a player on Osomniac, we were by far the worst top European team to ever play an iSeries. We were a fucking shambles, man. Our flank was Zappis and Knutson, and Zappis was playing Scout. We were dire, man.
I think,
but yeah, they kind of beat us like back quite. It wasn't that close actually. Like 2 maps were really close, and they kind of won Granary like comfortably. Well,
I think the thing with the Australians when they turn up to an event is that they can. I think they have the caliber to be able to perform at a top level, and if they were over here in the region practicing against top teams regularly, then I think they'd improve. But it's so ephemeral for them because they're constantly having to react to different things and like reaching new levels. It just depends where they peak in the tournament, I think, as to how they're going to place.
It's kind of always the story of Australia. It's not really like how good are they when they arrive, because they're always going to be behind when they arrive because they just don't have teams to practice against. Like, whose stream was I watching? Like, I was watching, I think it was Muma's stream. I was watching when they won the final the other day. I was like at work watching it on my phone, and someone asked him, "Do you think you'd be better if you had Mix-Up to practice against?" And he was like, well, fucking obviously. If you're playing against a much better team like day in, day out, of course you're going to get better. T don't have this, so they have like a week basically to make up for the lack of that. This is all about what can they do in that week. It's not really about where are they now.
But surely Yuki and Termo's team that they've been playing against all season was better than previous teams like the old Immunity had to practice against.
I don't know whether it was
We say,
better than
like-
the old Immunity, but
Not-
it's
as
certainly
in better
competitive.
Better practice.
Yeah,
But
right,
only,
Like,
but
because
only
Immunity
slightly.
had no one to play except for whoever else existed in Australia at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like on the one hand, it was only one team. It was also months ago at this point. They've been folded for a while. Also, it was only one style, and I don't think teams in Europe really play the way that whatever they were called, Ego played.
Yeah, that's it.
That grand final was some of the messiest TF2 I've ever seen, and they're not going to get that from us. That's for sure. I don't know how the other games are going to go, but they ain't going to get that game with us. So there's a lot of learning basically to do to like play against different styles. Like you can say they have one opponent to practice against, but it wasn't
I think it's
that great, and yeah, it's one style.
I think it all does come down to style as well. I don't think it's improving in the sense like objectively improving. I think what it is being able to adapt to how the European teams are playing whenever they come to a land like this, or how the top level teams are playing in Europe or North America, and being able to figure out what the best way of countering that is. They've got the ability to do it, and they've got like the teamwork to achieve it as well. Like they've got the individual ability, they've got the ability within their team, but they have to adapt on the fly to things that other teams have just been able to like routinely file as that is what we should do in that situation. That is what we should do in that situation from a number of months, and they just have to like rapidly adapt to it within a week. So if Jasmine are really grinding at the moment, which they appear to be, and they're boot camping and they seem fairly serious about it, another thing to mention is that they haven't got on tilt in the same way that the i59 team did when they were boot camping, because they're expecting to be losing these first games. They could peak or certainly get a lot better quite quickly.
I don't think they're going to tilt or anything either. Like, I think if anyone's going to choke at LAN, it's going to be either Solentis or like the majority of WARHURYEAH. Like, I don't feel like the Australians are going to tilt or choke or whatever you want to term it as. I feel less concerned about them replicating their online performance at LAN than I am about WARHURYEAH.
Let's have a talk about WARHURYEAH as an individual team for a bit then, because we kind of discussed their performance in ESEA, but we didn't really delve into the team, and I know we're running short on time and David's going to murder me, but I really want to discuss this. So for the team's individual components, do you feel like they've got the, ignoring team chemistry or the preparation that they've done, have they got the raw skill to be able to go head to head with, Crowns, Full Tilt, players like these, with the people that they've been able to get for the most recent WARHURYEAH roster?
I think they have the skill, there's no question about it, but the things that worry me are adaptability, like you said, and preparation. I mean, adaptability, I think in TF2 is like one of the most important things, but when we're coming up on a LAN, I always think about who's the most prepared, and it really, I'm not saying they're not prepared, because I know Banny plays 1 billion times a day, he's playing for 10 hours a day or some crazy thing, but oh boy. The talent is there, but it's just a question of whether they can put it together as a team, because it's really stupid and cliche to say, but it is a team game, and I mean, I don't know. Banny's been able to carry teams on his back in the past, but
he has, and he's in a power position at the moment, right? It's a position that he's comfortable with, playing that pocket scout role, and he's going to be able to carry from that position if required. So what's to say he's not going to be able to do it again?
But the other thing is that I'm thinking about with Froyo is they have this issue where in the invite division this season, they haven't had to try. Like there's been no good team. I mean, Ronin are great, whatever, but they really haven't had to like fight for anything all season long. And for a while, they've just been able to get through on raw DM alone for the most part in 90% of their matches. And I mean, I don't think raw DM alone is going to win you LAN, unfortunately. I mean, if there were more stronger teams and if they had to try and fight harder for the past season, I mean, I might think differently, but they haven't. It's just been, they easily won invite for the most part.
So what about the group stages then? Is that going to benefit them? They could kind of use that as their incentive to practice really hard and to grind it out and just literally use the first day of LAN, the group stages, to try and get into the swing of things. They haven't really had a practice partner in Ronin. There isn't really anyone else on their level in their region. They're stuck essentially in a bit of a similar situation to Jasmine.
Right.
So if the answer for them was to boot camp and start getting better over the course of the tournament, is that the same answer that WARHURYEAH are going to come up with?
Well, like I say, I don't. Maybe someone knows when they're traveling, but it seems to me like they've got a few days to really hit it hard, and then the group stages are going to have to be their only practice. It seems like to me as an outsider, which isn't ideal because I mean, some of the teams in groups are really good and some are less good. So I don't know. Rolling teams in group stages might just be the same thing as playing invite. I don't know.
They seem to have the right kind of attitude. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't see all of the grand final, but they came back. You know,
Yeah.
despite getting off to like a pretty horrendous start from what I've seen, they came back.
But
And
like
that's
I
I'm
what
say,
pretty sure that
something.
there's no way that any Bunny team is going to just like take their foot off the gas pedal and not want to win.
Yeah,
right?
but think back to i58 and how far Reason got without playing well.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
took them so long to warm up, but they just ground out the results when they needed it. And I think that's the sort of thing Banny and even TLR to a certain extent, that sort of experience and that just keep trying. Do you know what I mean? Not losing their cool will bring to their roster.
you can get far by getting lucky in the brackets too. Is the reality of it? Depends how your scheduling goes to a certain extent.
Yeah, they want to try and get matched up against some of the easier teams earlier on, but it's not something that they can particularly affect if they're using the group stages as, you know, practice rather than just trying to get the best placement they possibly can. Something that I just want to touch on before we end this one as well is the map elimination and how Reckoner is going to affect that. The Australians have started to get more familiar with it because they played it in their most recent season. I assume that WARHURYEAH have dabbled in it, but not really played it. Is that going to be just an insta-ban for both of those teams, do you think?
Don't know really. I don't think anyone wants to play it. Like
Surely
Full
Full
Tilt,
Tilt would.
nah, Full Tilt maintain its illusion that it's their map, but it's not been their map for about 2 months. Like they haven't won it in like
Maybe they
Like-
helped make it. That's why it's there now.
like the last 2 series that Full Tilt picked that map, they lost like from their pick. I don't think they were ever good at it, to be honest. It's just other teams didn't like it. So I don't really know. I don't think anyone really wants to play it, to be honest. Maybe the Australians will force other teams to ban it just because it's a bit more random. But I don't really think anyone wants to play that map.
Yeah, I mean, Reckoner has been on the North American PugChamp site for a very short amount of time, so I feel like it's basically the NA teams, unless they hit it hard, or sorry, the NA team or whatever, it's going to be unseen to them. And I mean, I think at least the Euro people might feel like they hate it and they haven't seen it as much, but you guys have played 1 billion times more than Froyo at the very least. I don't know about Jasmine T.
It gives the European teams a distinct advantage in the map bans. Because even like imagine Crowns and Full Tilt maybe wouldn't fancy it against each other, but they probably fancy it against the foreign teams.
Who's talking? Appears to be a desk.
The ceiling.
I'm obeying Twitch rules.
Savvy, you have a talking
He's got to take his
ceiling.
nipples out.
He's smoking marijuangas.
You
I know
joining
he
the
is.
niche.
Right, so I think we got everyone's predictions at the end there, or did I miss anybody out? Did I
I don't-
take everyone?
I didn't give any predictions.
Mine,
Oh,
to
did
my
you?
knowledge.
Alright,
Mine
as
were
long as
exactly the same as Ali's.
Okay, I can't even remember what Alice were. What were they?
Was it not Crown's first, Full Tilt second, Froyo third, and the Zenix fourth?
Right,
It
yeah,
was,
yeah.
Oh, he said Full Tilt first.
Yeah.
because
Oh, my bad,
He,
okay, I go-
he
I go-
plays on them.
I go
Of course, he
Crowns,
put Full Tilt first.
Crowns 1, Full Tilt 2, Froyo 3, Zenix 4.
Kaidus, what about you? Where do you see these teams picking up?
I don't know, to be honest. I'll give you 2 sets. I think if everyone brings their online form, we're going to win. Full Tilt are going to come second, Froyo will come third, and Zenix will like sneak fourth. But what I suspect is going to happen is that I still think we're going to win, but I think like only half of Full Tilt are going to show up, figuratively, and Sil is going to literally not show up. and then Froyo are gonna beat them and take second, and then Full Tilt will come third. And I still think Xenix will probably sneak fourth, but I'm really not sure. Like I think fourth completely depends on the matchups actually, because for example, as Infused, we went out i49 in 5th/6th, but we only lost to TCM in the bracket. So weird shit can happen with fourth place. You can not even lose to you can lose to the best team twice basically, or the two best teams and go out. So fourth team is like weird as hell. I don't really know. But I'll say Xenix.
It's certainly going to be interesting either way, because partly because we have so little data on how the teams are going to stack up. We'll start seeing over the next week, I think, really how Jasmine T begin to develop. With the previous boot camps, the Australian teams have started to get more and more competitive, although they've still been losing during their boot camp. And then when they turn up to land, they're just on like a slightly different level and they're really performing well. So I think over the next few days, we'll start to see them warm up. We'll also start to see people heading off over there. When are you hopping on over, Getawhale?
I getting on a plane Wednesday evening and stepping out into the beautiful United Kingdom on Thursday morning. So, yeah, I'll get to boot
That's
camp
interesting.
analyst desks. Why is it interesting? Is that too early?
It's interesting because
It's
interesting because I'm going to be setting off earlier than you are, because the Poopmobile only goes 2 miles an hour, so it's going to take me literally that long to get there.
Yeah.
I'm picking up CommanderX on the way, so expect neither of us to make an appearance at the LAN.
There's gonna be like no
that's
production.
great.
We'll
The
cast
LAN.
it from our phone. I've got Mumble on my phone. It'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll just cast it from there. Have you
Mumble
got
on my
data?
phone. Yeah, I got loads
well,
of
we're
data.
sorted. Why are you even going?
4.5 gig. That's at least what, a map and a half.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
War, have you got any pending travel and death?
No, I'm a responsible adult.
Good. Well, we'll have War on the analyst desk at the very least. Dashner was going to be here with us as well, just to give you a flavour of what's going to be going on in terms of production. But if you saw DreamHack Summer, then think that, but bigger and better, with more of a intercontinental feel, more of a world championships feel rather than an exhibition. So it's going to be super interesting from that perspective. And as we were alluding to there, we have a full analyst desk as well with a lot of talent that you guys can check out. I think there was an announcement over on teamfortress.tv. I think the event itself, though, we can all agree, is set up to be a pretty competitive one, and it should have, if not the highest level of TF2, it's got some mad fraggers in there as well that are just going to perform some exciting stuff, as long as Stalash doesn't go on Sniper for 20 minutes.
Hey, man.
So
See you at LAN.
see you at LAN. That is the end result of this. See you at LAN. And actually, I'm going to be tuning into these Jasmine scrims, because that always really gets me hyped. It gets me in the mood for it. You can feel that the LAN is approaching when teams have started coming over and they're genuinely boot camping, and it begins, really does. So see you at LAN.
The infamous 4 days before LAN where teams actually try.